Longhorn Nation, we're back!
Sam Ehlinger was born to be a Texas Longhorn, and he receives a lot more hate than he deserves. He's been a very good player and a very good person to represent Longhorn Nation over the last 4 years, but I think that the college football world really disrespects this guy and doesn't give him a lot of credit, and it's all because you don't know his actual story. I bet you didn't know that Sam plays for his father, who passed away when he was in high school, and that he dreamed about being a Longhorn his whole life. So today we're going to talk about the inspiring story of Sam Ehlinger, his Texas career so far, and what his potential looks like going into the NFL draft. Today is my first video in my series where I'll tell the stories of all the top seniors and players eligible in the 2021 NFL draft, and I plan on doing a video like this as often as possible and every single day starting January 1st. So if you have an NFL draft prospect you want me to cover, please let me know down in the comment section. Subscribe if you're new, hit that like button if you want to support this kind of video. Help me reach 25,000 subscribers by the end of December. Share this video with your friends, comment your thoughts, suggest who I should do next, and stay until the end. Now let's get started and tell the inspiring story of Sam Ehlinger. Before Sam was pegged as the quarterback to bring the Texas Longhorns back, he would flash the hook 'em horns hand motions as a toddler, and his father was a die-hard fan of the program. They went to all the Longhorn games, rain or shine, and he developed a really special bond with his dad and the University of Texas. They played football together, he taught Sam about life, and they had an extremely close bond. Sam eventually became a really good high school football quarterback in the state of Texas, and he was likely going to get a chance to play big-time football. He broke records at his high school that were set by Drew Brees and Nick Foles, but tragedy would strike and his father wouldn't be able to see all of it. His dad was an attorney, and he died when he was only 46 years old after competing in a triathlon in Alcatraz in San Francisco, and Sam remembers getting the call and just collapsing to the floor. He said he had to grow up and mature really quickly and be the father of his family because he did have siblings. He said, quote, "It's just like I want to make him proud and I want to do the things that he wanted me to do. I want to exceed his expectations. I know he's watching. That's kind of how it plays into my motivation, that if he was here, what he'd be making me do, and how could I get better?" As many probably imagine, Sam decided to commit to Texas, and it was not only a dream of his, but it would make his dad proud. He wasn't just some 3-star kid either. He had a ton of offers and was a 4-star recruit. 24/7 Sports listed him as the number 4 dual threat quarterback and the 119th best player in the class of 2017. He was ready to come to Texas and play for both himself and his father's legacy. As a freshman, the job was originally Shane Buechele's, as he had been the starter from the previous year. But Buechele began to struggle a little bit with injury, and he kind of lost his touch, so Sam would get a chance. He started against San Jose State, and he led the team to a 56-0 victory and had over 200 yards passing and a touchdown, along with 50 yards on the ground. This made him just the 10th freshman to start a game at the quarterback in the university's history. He started his first big game against number 4 USC, where they would lose in double overtime because he had fumbled the ball and then they lost because of a field goal. This was very tough on Sam, and he used it as motivation. Buechele did come back and started the game against Iowa State, but he would get injured, and Sam was once again given the chance to start, and that was what the fan base wanted at that time. Against Kansas State, he led Texas to a 40-34 double overtime victory, and he had 380 passing yards and 107 rushing yards, and that was personal highs for both those categories in 2017. It was the best mark for a freshman in school history, and he was named the Earl Campbell Player of the Week. He played well in his first Red River rivalry matchup, and then lost a heartbreaker to Oklahoma State in overtime. He went on to concussion protocol and missed their entire game against Baylor, and an ear problem kept him out one game, and then he battled it out with Shane Buechele and Gerard Hurd, but Herman named him the guy for their game against Texas Tech, and he played very sparingly against Missouri in the Texas Bowl. As a freshman, he went 2-4 as a starter and passed for 1,915 yards and 11 touchdowns, while also rushing for 381 yards and 2 touchdowns, as he was the leading rusher on the team. Going into 2018, he was named the starter for their season opener against Maryland, which they lost, partially because of 2 picks thrown by him in the 4th quarter. He rebounded against Tulsa and then beat number 24 USC, and that's when people finally knew Sam could win a big game. He dominated through the air and on the ground, and they beat number 17 TCU, and then he had 386 yards and 5 touchdowns in their 48-45 upset over Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, and Cameron Dicker won them the game. He was the Big 12 Player of the Week, and many people said he became a Longhorn legend after that moment. He separated his shoulder against Baylor, but came back for the Oklahoma State game and accounted for 4 touchdowns in a close loss. He then lost an absolute thriller to West Virginia, where Will Greer would score the game-winning 2-point conversion. They beat Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Kansas to finish the regular season, and Ehlinger had set a Big 12 record for most completions without an interception, but he would break that as he threw 2 picks in the Kansas game, and they ended up going to the Big 12 championship. He threw for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns and also rushed for 1 on the ground as they lost by 2 scores to Oklahoma. And after that, they went on to go to the Sugar Bowl against Georgia, and he famously declared that Texas was back. As a sophomore, he finished with 3,292 yards and 25 touchdowns with only 5 picks, and he was considered a legitimate Heisman contender going into the 2019 season. He started the year on a tear as he threw for 17 touchdowns in his first 5 games, including the classic game versus Joe Burrow and LSU, and they were 4-1 going into the Red River rivalry. They lost by a touchdown to the Sooners. He was sacked 9 times, and their college football playoff hopes were basically done. They then beat Kansas off of a miracle, and then lost to TCU after he threw 4 picks. They then barely beat Kansas State before they lost to Iowa State and Baylor, and they ended up finishing the regular season at 7-5 after they beat Texas Tech. Ehlinger really disappointed by the end of the year, and Texas had to settle for the Alamo Bowl, where they beat number 11 Utah in dominating fashion. He threw for 3,663 yards, 32 touchdowns, and doubled his picks to 10. Going into 2020, it was going to be his last year, and the heat was on him to win the Big 12 and have a big season. He started out hot with over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns against UTEP, and then he led into a huge comeback win over Texas Tech and threw for 5 more touchdowns in that game. He threw for 4 touchdowns in a loss to TCU, and then led the Longhorns to a comeback in the Red River rivalry, but they ended up losing in 4 overtimes. Besides a 3-touchdown performance and a win over Oklahoma State, it's been a pretty disappointing 2020 season, as he's lost 2 of the 3 biggest games for the year for Texas, and they'll have to await their fate in a bowl game. Ehlinger may have the option to come back because of eligibility reasons, but I think he'll end up graduating and will try to make it in the NFL, as he has accepted a spot in the Reese's Senior Bowl. He absolutely loves Texas and gets way too much heat for his play. He's a great quarterback. He's not a Vince Young or a Colt McCoy, but Texas' problem is not the quarterback position. Tom Herman has to figure it out in 2021 or he will be gone. Texas football has really struggled since Mac Brown left, and Sam Ehlinger should be embraced and not hated on. Most mock drafts have Sam as a late round pick or undrafted because he struggles in his mechanics, his ball placement, he doesn't have a ton of poise in the pocket, his footwork isn't spectacular, and he just doesn't look like a stereotypical NFL quarterback. The road ahead will definitely be tough for Ehlinger, but I think he can do it. He's a pretty athletic dude, a leader, and a very experienced guy, so I'm very curious to see what his draft day will be like. Plus, he has his dad fueling him, and we all know that certain things like that can put a player over the edge. I hope the best for Sam, and his story to get to this point is pretty remarkable to say the least. Whenever you feel the need to trash talk him or root against him, remember where he came from and what this means to him and his family. He does his best, and we all got to go beyond the game of football and see the bigger picture here, and I root for Sam Ehlinger. What do you guys think though? If you're a Texas fan, let me know of Sam Ehlinger, and let me know who you think the future quarterback will be. If you're a fan of the channel, be sure to give the video a like, and let me know what NFL draft prospect or senior I should cover next, as I'm going to try to do one of these videos every single day. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.